Come, Yanma, Danawi Budjeri Gumara, walk with me in good spirit as we head to the river and listen to the stories of this place.
The river is Gondwana. It's an ancient river, so it was flowing well before the 90 million years ago that Australia started to crack off from Gondwana.
The precursor of the present-day Hawkesbury was up there. Somewhere between 3 and 6 kilometres above us, there was rock. Over the last 160 million years, that rock has been gradually weathered away and eroded out and transported out into the Tasman Sea.
Rivers move snake-like backwards and forwards across their floodplains. Water and the snake or the eel move in incredibly similar ways.
A lot of the rock carvings, and they are massive rock carvings that happen along the river, are of the eel.
There's certain places where you have the engravings of the figure on either side of the river and a very, very deep hole. And they're at a turning point in the river, and that's where the story says that he rested.
The eel travelled down the river. He stopped at the waterhole, drifted off to sleep.
There are many Darug names along this river and places of really special spiritual significance to us, like Wawami, the place of many eyes, and Doombalua, the path of the rainbow. And then you also have the words that describe the river as being a living body, words that mean arm and leg and mouth and throat and eye. And so you see it as really being a living entity.
Not far from Doombalua is the big eel. It's a huge eel being carved in the rock on the other side of the river. It's actually where the river goes back into the ranges. That was the most fiercely defended place on the river, and at one point in 1796 to 1803, the warriors actually drove the settlers out.
Philip and Hunter came up the river in 1789, and it wasn't till Little Cat Eye Creek, quite a way up the river, that the first Aboriginal people came down to meet them. On that trip they studied the landscape pretty closely, and they did see round about Windsor, where the banks are much lower and lightly wooded, they could see evidence that there had been digging on the banks for something that they identified as being a small yam.
The river is like the lifeblood of Aboriginal people. The waterways give us our food, give us our livelihood. I made a transporting canoe. Everyday life was centralised around the river life. The Hawkesbury Nepean had an abundance of yams, and they were a staple diet. We cultivated in a sense that we were respectful to the food source, respectful to Mother Earth.
And the sailing boats, when they come up the river, they would sail the inward tides. They couldn't go against the tides. They used to have horses here and tow them along the bank. A lot of the farmers along the river had their own little boats, and they would cart their products down. Some used to go round to Sydney.
The surprise I travelled on, and I'd go from either Sackville or Ecology Bridge down to Brooklyn and back up. They'd take produce down and just stop it anywhere on the way home, drop your plank out onto the bank, and maybe they'd want some groceries or something, they'd deliver them.
When I was about 7 or 8, I used to go over to the river with my father in the dray and all our milk cans, and we'd back the dray down into the water and we'd just dip it out in bucketfuls and fill the cans, and we'd bring it home, and that would be used for our drinking water, washing, for everything like. But the water was beautiful in those days. If we were working near the river, we just went and put our head in the water and had a drink.
I remember growing up here and eating eels out of the river from when I was 5. So from Yarramundi through to all the wetlands and the creeks out at Cat-Eye Creek. Mum grew up here in the Sackville camp. She knew all the back places in the Hawkesbury to go fishing for eels.
In 2020, the water came really close to coming in. Then a year later, the March 2021 floods came and we had nearly 3 metres of water through the house and the basement rooms were inundated, and it went another metre or so above that.
One flood completely demolished our shed, it demolished our cow bales, it demolished the dairy, demolished the house, took everything.
Last week when we tested this, the nutrient levels were so high, I know a factor in that was actually the sewage level in the river. So it depends, safe. It depends what your purpose is for the river. If you want to preserve the ecosystem, it's not safe at all. And in terms of bacteria and blue-green algae is one of the big health problems here, not safe at all from time to time. All the tributaries of this provide Sydney with about 98% of our drinking water. This river gives so much to us, most people don't even realise. And in return, we give it effluent and runoff.
The Hawkesbury River is home to the short-finned eel and the long-finned eel.
Different types of fish, like bass, yellow-finned bream and swamp harriers.
So if we want to get the health of the Hawkesbury River really to a high standard, it needs nice big buffers of bush around all the creeks and obviously the river. And it serves multiple purposes. Provides clean water. It's a highway for all sorts of different animals and plants to move through the landscape.
Luna Leopold did develop a theory of meander bends for alluvial rivers. The meander wavelength, so along the axis between two meander bends, if you measure that length, that should equal 11 times the channel width.